Do you guys wear your cool shoes today too?
The people know.
Because we all know you are the mortgage guy.
Yes.
So you're telling me my dog Airbud can't get that $1 million mansion? He's a professional basketball player, Brad. Like Harley, biker.
Sure. Like I'm a bit of a poser in the cyclist community. You just got to stop eating eggs, right?
I can't. Bring back steroids in baseball.
Pride of homeownership is undefeated. I would say the right time to buy a home is always yesterday, I guess, is probably what most people say.
Yep.
Literally, seller paid, down payment, whole thing, got in for $1,000 of their own money. They just rolled $150,000 of equity into their next property, moving up.
They have a carousel in there.
They do have a carousel in there.
Your name had to be Max Powers. You had to be making the millions. I was like, Brad, I need this done.
That's the job. That's the teamwork, right? For sure.
Let me just mow my lawn and drink my beer in the alleyway.
Yep. The home you get is always the home you were meant to get.
I'm at the bars reading the books, Brad. Welcome everyone to episode 9 of Weekly Deposit. We are glad to have you here, but we have a very special guest with us today. Someone we've been promoting all week, a top tier mortgage loan officer with Bell Bank, an avid cyclist, a lover of nature and the outdoors, a deranged Minnesota sports friend,
hugely,
like all Minnesota sports fans, a knowledgeable sneakerhead, and most important, and probably the best title, an amazing dad. Welcome, Brad Nolan, to the podcast.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Welcome.
I'm glad to be here. I appreciate those kind words, that rundown of my interests and things about me. So thank you.
Of course. You know, we always want to big up our guests. So before we begin, I want to thank everyone that sent us their real estate and mortgage finance questions. We appreciate it, and we will be sure to answer all your questions later in the podcast. So continue to watch. But Brad, I want to kind of get into some other stuff first. Because we all know you are the mortgage guy, and so we'll talk about that a little bit later in the podcast. But first, tell us a little bit about yourself, the person, Brad Nolan.
Sure. I'm born and raised and still currently live in St. Paul, Minnesota. I have 2 children, 7 and 3, a boy and a girl. They take up just about all of my time where I'm not working. And even this week, as we talked about, while I am working, my son was sick and I'm working at home trying to juggle things. Mm-hmm. As you mentioned, I'm a biker, mostly mountain bike or fat biking in the winter. Road biking I do as well. But, you know, when you have kids, you just got to try to find ways to stay active, to get outside. And so that's...
So I was going to use, sorry to cut you off, but I was going to use the term biker, but I didn't know if that meant like Harley, biker.
Sure.
So I use cyclist. So I was
that's probably the proper term.
Okay.
And I'm a bit of a poser in the cyclist community.
Yeah.
So
Really? How? I thought you're a professional almost, because you go so many, for a while. You bike what, like a 2-3 hours a day?
Yeah, I'll bike if I get on my bike, I'll go for a while. But I'm kind of like that wave of bikers that came from COVID, where it was like, well, everything's closed, I'll buy a bike, and that'll become my personality.
Gotcha. Better than the Peloton.
Gotcha.
I have a Peloton as well, so yeah.
I don't know. I think at least you're outdoors.
Yeah,
correct. Yeah, when I can, I try to get outside and spin the wheels a little bit.
So I want to kind of tell the viewers and listeners how we met.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
The good old Maplewood Mall.
Yes.
Right?
An institution in Minnesota.
It's a great mall, by the way.
Yeah.
They have a carousel in there.
They do have a carousel in there.
You're there to shop.
Yep.
And it's pretty empty, so if you ever want to go.
Yeah.
So talk about kind of the whole Maplewood Mall start, how me and you met, and how maybe coincidence, maybe fate, maybe whatever, how we kind of got into the same industry later on. Too.
Sure. Well, we met, as you mentioned, at the Maplewood Mall. I was working as an assistant manager at K Jewelers, and you were working at T-Mobile, I believe. And it was kind of this weird corner where it was like K, T-Mobile, even Billy was over at AT&T, kind of right around the corner. And there was just like a couple of us, me, you, Billy, Gorin.
Marlandis.
Yep, we all just kind of connected. Remember, I'd bring the TV out on Sundays and we would watch Vikings games.
Yep.
But in a weird way, I think a lot of us had the time to connect at Maplewood Mall. If you remember, it was back just after the recession of 2009, 2010. So the mall just wasn't all that busy. And so that's kind of how we were able to, converse, interact with one another. And then kind of down the road, I went to Wells Fargo, got into mortgage. And we always kind of lightly stayed in touch, probably through like Facebook or something. Yeah. And then you went to, I believe, VSM.
Yep.
And we reconnected, and the rest has been history.
Yeah, I mean, Maplewood Mall was crazy, but I think we were all just genuine people, like me, Goran, you, Billy, Marlandis, and we all just connected because, like you said, there was time on our hands.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say, were you guys actually working or just hanging out?
Mostly hanging out.
I remember I watched Goran, one day Goran brought the Taken movie, and we watched the full Taken movie while we were at T-Mobile kiosk.
Not one sale happened.
I doubt it.
Well, hey, man. Hey, I was still getting paid, so.
Yeah. No, we were having fun. And when I think about like myself and how I view different economic activity, like working at a mall in 2009 is definitely one of those things where I'm like, going to a mall today is far different than it was in 2008, 2009.
Yeah.
I mean, there's 2-3 times as many people right now. They're actually buying stuff. It was pretty surreal working at a
You said there's more
retail.
people now or then?
I would say more people now.
Really?
Yeah.
Even with like the Amazon and everything? I felt like the brick and mortar,
I mean, at least from what I see, like when I don't go to Maplewood as much just because I don't live over there, but like Rosedale, Mall of America, when I'm with my kids, when I'm walking through, I'm like, there's more people here shopping. When we worked at the mall, it seemed like it was a lot of mall walkers, teenagers hanging out, that kind of thing. And now it just seems like it's more people who are there for a reason to shop.
Yeah, Rosedale is pretty busy.
Yeah,
I feel like the mall is the winter place because it's like, where else do you go if you're not really into winter activities?
Right. Stay warm, get a meal, watch a movie, whatever.
Spend money.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, but then I also think it was also all of our sale backgrounds because we were all in sales, right?
Yes.
And in one way or another, right? You were selling jewelry. Marlandis was selling shoes. Billy was AT&T. Me and Goran were T-Mobile.
Right.
So it was all like sales jobs. So, it's
same age,
natural
sales.
progression type thing.
Yep.
And we forgot Brianna.
Brianna,
I feel bad. I know she's gonna.
There's been a lot of faces that we've kind of met through the way.
Yeah.
And really, even like I think about myself working there. Before I worked at K, I always had an interest in real estate, but Goran was kind of the first one who sort of vocalized it in a way that kind of resonated with me. And I was kind of like, man, maybe this guy's onto something, with real estate.
That guy for sure was onto something. Yeah. And he was the one, I remember big ups to him. He would come in for 8-10 hour shifts and literally afterwards go to his apartment to fix something for his tenants or stuff like that. Even back then he was starting to acquire real estate. So
he's a hustler.
Dude. Yeah.
Goran's a hustler.
Okay, through your personal Instagram account, we see that you love biking, cycling, regardless of Minnesota weather. How'd you get into that?
I actually got into it who is now my brother-in-law, lives down in the Milwaukee area. He has a YouTube channel specific to like mountain biking, winter biking.
Nice.
With a pretty good following. I think he's up to about 11,000 followers. But he brought me out winter fat biking the first time, and I'd never done it. And it was awesome. I had a blast, and he's just like, well, if you like this, you should try it in the summer when there's not snow. And I did that, and I was like, yeah, this is pretty fun.
Is it still the fat tires in the summer too? Or?
No, in the summer, it's more of a skinny tire.
Gotcha. Okay.
But it's just kind of one of those activities that, I'm not going off crazy jumps or flying through the air or anything like that. But it gives me like sort of that feeling of being on a bike when you're a kid, just kind of like a little bit of a sense of adventure and kind of, I don't have my cell phone on me for the most part. So it just feels like you're kind of disconnected from things going on. In your normal
we
life.
all need that. So what trails do you go on?
In the cities here, I typically go to Lebanon Hills down in Egan.
Yeah, it's close by my house.
Yep. Battle Creek I'll go to over in St. Paul, but mostly up a couple hours up north in Ironton, Crosby. There's a place called Cuyuna, and that's where my short-term rental is, and they have 100 miles of mountain biking trails up there.
Would you say that's your favorite?
Without a doubt, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's kind of what's probably the longest you've biked for.
That's a great question. I would say the most that I think I've done on a mountain bike, I believe, was 18 miles, which is a decent amount. But like when I'm out there talking to other people, I'll be like, "Oh, I've got 30 miles in today, and I'm going another 10." And I'm like,
"Jeez,
okay, that's more than I would care to do." Quite honestly, you know.
Doesn't your butt get sore on the
Yes.
bike?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. And that's where I'm by no means like an endurance biker, especially having 2 kids. I mean, I can only be gone for so long before I need to get back to work or to my kids.
Yep.
So if I go out, I normally try to go 5 to 10 miles. Nothing terribly crazy.
I never really got into biking, but remember the craze with Lance Armstrong and when he was winning the Tour de France, and everyone was like biking and and they had the little wristbands, Live Strong.
Yeah.
Eric the bike shop sales went through the roof.
I believe that.
Time.
Yeah.
You remember Eric? I don't even know if he's still around anymore, but
Eric the bike man.
Yeah, Eric the bike.
The high pitched voice.
Yeah.
They couldn't keep the Live Strong in stock. It was it was selling like crazy.
It was huge. And then he had his fall from grace, clearly. Lance Armstrong.
What was it? The steroid
Yeah,
thing?
what happened to Lance?
It was that he was caught using steroids and cheating to win, basically, right? And then there was
was it the steroids that were helping him to cheat to win, or was he like moving down the trail when people were?
I think it was the steroids that he got busted using in the Netflix documentary Icarus.
I mean, the guy had cancer. What else? I don't know. I have a very weird take with the whole steroid thing. I'm like, whether it be baseball, I'm like, just because you take steroid doesn't automatically make you good at cycling or hitting the ball or hand-to-eye coordination or anything like that.
Right.
Yeah, it helps you with power, but you still have to work out. It's not like you can just sit on the couch, take steroids, and then look like He-Man.
Right.
Yeah, you still got to do the work.
You still got to do the work. Exactly. That's why I always tell Julian about Liver King, and he's like, he takes steroids. I'm like, he still does the work, even though he does.
Well, but okay, if you come out and say, hey, I take steroids, I got nothing against that.
Yeah.
But you lied about taking steroids.
Right. Yeah.
And you lied multiple times about it. That's where I'm like, all right, bro, come on now.
And in baseball, you look at all of those athletes were training, but then you look at Barry Bonds, Mark McGwire,
Sammy Sosa.
Like, wow, that guy's twice as big.
That dude, Mark McGwire, had the lockjaw of a pit bull. You see that guy?
Sammy Sosa is as white as like our table, our weekly.
I don't know. Maybe the steroids mess with his brain or something like that.
I don't know. Sammy Sosa looks like
he looks like a ghost.
Yeah, like a ghost, literally.
Yeah, literally.
The ghost of Sammy Sosa. And oh my God, when they had that little race, I love that. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
That was the best time of baseball.
Yeah, for sure.
That was the peak baseball.
Yes. Yeah.
Bring back steroids in baseball.
That was the only time I was interested in baseball.
If I was a commissioner, I'd go there myself and juice them up. Let's go.
Yeah.
Hey, whatever to bring back the viewers.
There you go.
Okay. I think Julian touched on this, but I felt like it was an outlet for you to kind of relieve stress in this industry of ours, right?
Sure.
Whether, we like to work out. Julian likes to play basketball. I like to play flag football, biking. So it's just that thing where it can kind of just relieve some stress. Like you said, go out there, no phone.
Right.
Just be in the outdoors and forget about, all the crazy deals or the fires or whatever the case may be.
And even, thinking about like flag football and basketball, like not that I am in races or anything like that, but there are times where I'm like, I want to go a little fast to kind of get that, not necessarily competitive juice, but like,
you want to push yourself.
Yeah, push myself a little bit in a way that's not work. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like every day we push ourselves at work. And so it's nice to have some kind of disconnect where I can still push myself that is not as consequential as work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep. And everyone needs that.
Yeah. In some form of outlet.
Yeah. You need an outlet.
Right.
For sure. Hobbies. I remember Gordon used to make beats, and I used to tell him his beats were trash. But
was he using like Fruity Loops or something like that?
He had the whole setup, like the mic and everything. He's like, get on, we're going to make a mixtape. Yeah. I was like, no.
Hey, everyone had their days of making beats. I used to make beats back in the, and I thought they were nice, but they were trash.
No. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. His beats have gotten way better. So
he's still doing it?
He still does it. It's a hobby for him, and it's something like an outlet. So it's a creative outlet he does. So I remember he did send me a couple of beats, and I'm like, actually, these are pretty good. I'll never tell him that though.
Well, it's on there now, but we should.
he won't see this.
We should use one of his beats.
Yeah.
For the intro.
Yeah, if he doesn't charge us an arm and leg, we'll see.
Play it, Goran. Come on, man.
Goran looking for royalties out of us.
Come on.
He's gonna hit us with that copyright ban on YouTube. Okay, so kind of moving on to our next subject, a subject that resonates with all of us, right? First, before we even get into the subject, Brad, show us what sneakers you have on today.
Ooh. Should I take it off?
Yeah, I think that would be the easiest way.
Well, I have on my my Jordan.
Show it to that camera.
Yeah.
The camera that's angled towards you.
Do you guys wear your cool shoes today too?
I got on
Julian
my cool
did.
Grays.
I have my Jordan 5.
Hey.
Laney edition. Laney High School is where Michael Jordan went to high school. Yeah, I don't even know. I just grew up in the 90s, and it's like, how do you not get into Jordan shoes if you grew up in the 90s?
Yeah, same.
But I got them in Bell Blue is kind of what I was thinking when I purchased these.
And there goes Julian's. Julian, can you, what?
The people know. The people know. Come on now. It's
okay,
a cool
for the
gray
people
11s.
who don't know.
This is a retro cool grays 11s. This is my favorite Jordan. It's just the most comfortable to me, you know. And then these always come out around not this actual one, but the 11s always come out around Christmas time or December. You know, that's when I remember getting. Now there's so many Jordans that's being released nowadays,
right?
That, you know, he releases a different colorway, like, I don't know, like every month, you know, in each retro.
Speaking of Jordan, there's a movie coming out called Air.
Yep.
About Air Jordans.
Yeah.
Matt
and
Damon,
it has
Ben
Matt,
Affleck, right?
Yeah, Matt Damon, Ben Affleck.
Yeah.
Which is a weird. Is one of them supposed to be Phil Knight? Like, I don't get it.
I think they're supposed to be not Phil Knight, but like one of them is like the Jordan's agent, and one of them is the rep from Nike trying to pitch the agent. Because I think it was Reebok. I always forget if Reebok was Reebok with Jordan or LeBron. One of them, Jordan or LeBron, was going to go with Reebok originally, and then Nike came in.
No, I think Reebok offered LeBron a deal, and Adidas did.
Okay.
But Nike gave him the rookie deal, the $94 million, and he went with Nike.
I think he made the right call.
Right?
Well, it's $1 billion now. So.
Yeah. They gave him the $1 billion contract, but I mean, just coming right out of high school, $94 million. I think his rookie contract was $5 million, so he was already $100 million up.
Do you guys wear LeBrons or just Jordans or?
I had one. I can't remember which pair of LeBrons it was, but I mostly wore them just to play basketball.
Okay.
I wish I would have held on to him a little bit cleaner than I did.
I only liked one.
I collect LeBrons.
Do you?
I got, my favorites are his 7, 8s, 9s, and 10s. After 11, I'm like, ugh.
And are those the Miami years?
Yeah. Which one
yeah.
was the South Beach one with like the South Beach colors? That was my favorite.
Oh, I think that was the 9s. 9s or the 8s. I do have his 7 media days. Those were really nice.
They were the 9s.
The 9s? Yeah. So I have the 7 media days that like it has the LA Laker colors.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So those are really nice. He released those like two or 3 seasons ago.
Sure.
Do you know what he wore for his record breaking?
No, I didn't. I think
I saw he brought the headband back.
Yeah, he brought the headband back, but I think he had like this year's
Okay.
shoes that he dropped.
How'd you come to like love sneakers and the whole like sneaker head culture?
You know, mostly was just, I think, growing up in the 90s, like, I think people who weren't old enough in the 90s can't even understand how big the NBA with Michael Jordan in it was.
Yeah.
It was bigger than football. It was
It was global.
It was insane.
The Space Jams, remember? Yeah.
And the first shoes that I got the first Jordans that I got was in, I think I was in 4th or 5th grade, and it was the Jordan 7, the Bugs Bunny one. I forget what they're called. I can't even remember what they're called. But I just remember like loving that shoe and just kind of, the 90s was just such a weird time. It was like, if you know, kind of a thing, you know?
Yeah.
And I, being now 6'3", I've always been tall. So basketball was kind of my sport, tall and lanky. I wasn't going to play hockey or football. I'd get crushed. So it was always just kind of basketball, and I just kind of gravitated towards Jordan like everybody else.
What's your favorite Jordan?
One that I've never owned is probably the Concord 11s.
Concord's a good one, yeah.
But otherwise, I'd probably say on my feet, the most comfortable are probably the 3s. I'd probably say like a black cement 3. Or I've loved kind of the Tinker 3s. I really like. They're kind of, some people loved them, some people hated them. But I've always just thought the 3s are really comfortable on my feet for sure.
Yeah, I was too poor to have Jordans. I had Shaqs.
Yeah, I see it again. I didn't start collecting Jordans until I became an adult.
Yeah, I had my own money. Yeah, I remember my mom was like, "Yo, these shoes are way too much. We're gonna get you Shaqs." I had Shaqs, Latrell Sprewells. Remember the spinners?
The Dada Supremes.
Yeah, where you pumped it and thing. I even had one pair of KGs. So everyone,
the Nikes or the Adidas KGs?
I think the Adidas KG, if I remember correctly. But everything but Jordans.
See, I had the Filas for a couple of days. I got a quick story to tell you. So my mom bought me some Filas because it was just like a popular thing. With the one with the strap on there, right?
Oh yeah.
So I go to the park with some of my boys, and this is in Battle Creek. The Battle Creek by the elementary. It's a big park. So back in that day, there used to be like 50 to 60 people that come up there and play basketball, right?
Yep.
I seen one dude step on the court, and they were like, "This dude got on the Forever I Love Atlantis. He got the Filas on," and just got crushed. Like everyone was laughing at him, like, "Oh my!" And I was like, "Dang, I got on some Forever I Love Atlantis." I went home and took them off
just snuck out of there as fast as you could. But think about that, like, man,
they were a great shoe back in the day. It was that bad of a shoe.
Man, kids can be ruthless. I don't know.
It's like that's like internet roasting before the internet. Hey, you're getting cooked in real life now.
No, yeah, and it hurts. It hurts way more, trust me. And the internet, you can just click and go. Yeah. Right? They're just roasting you.
You got a long walk home.
You got a long walk home.
Oh, man, he did too. The next day I seen him, he didn't have on those shoes.
Okay. I want to kind of get this question out, right? Because I've always thought about this, and me and Julian have talked about this. What's your take on sneakers being perceived as quote unquote more streetwear and not professional? Do you feel there's like that stigma, or is it changing with the younger generation? Do you feel like you could walk into a mortgage meeting or a client with your Jordans?
I think I would have to. It would depend on the client. Mm-hmm. Like I do keep these Jordans in my office. I wear them around my office when I'm feeling good. But if I go to a meeting, typically I change into more work shoe.
Yep.
But it kind of depends. Like sometimes when we go out to certain meetings, like Bell has a relationship with certain local athletes. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we'll go out to things and they'll be there kind of mingling around and they pull off the cool shoes. And I'm like, man, I don't know if I have the confidence or the swagger to do that,
Yeah, it depends on the person.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah, to me, I just don't. I'm like, I think that they're cool, and I feel like the younger generation doesn't care as much. Like, I always look at like someone like Jerry Seinfeld, and he has like a bunch of sneakers on and stuff like that, and I'm like, okay, but I could see where, there's that stigma or whatever, maybe the older generation or something like that. But even then, it's like, I think we're assuming.
Sure.
Because they could be big Jordan fans.
So right? Can I tell one really cool story about Jordan?
Of course.
Yeah.
So a couple of years ago for charity, we did a Jordan shoe giveaway. And we basically got a pair of Jordan 6 black infrareds. And we did a thing on social media to give them away along with some money that we got from my employer, from Bell. But what caused this whole thing is I was in Edina at Shake Shack. And it was like just before COVID or some 2017, maybe, I don't know. And I was waiting in line because the Shake Shack had just opened. Yep. And there was a gentleman next to me, and I looked down at his shoes, and he had the Jordan 3 black cement on. I'm like, wow, hey, cool shoe. And this guy was probably in his 50s. He was older than me for sure.
Yep.
And I'm like, whoa, hey, cool shoes. I saw those came out, a couple days ago or whatever. And he's like, thank you so much. Started talking to me. And he had moved here from India like a couple of years back, but he's like, man, in the 90s, like we would go to the store to get VHS tapes of Jordan playing, from 4 years before. And he's just like, I always loved Jordans, always finally, was able to get a pair because you can't always get a pair, even if you can, sometimes you miss out. I just remember like walking away, like I just had this conversation with somebody 12 years older than me from across the world. And we both have the same, nostalgic feeling about Michael Jordan and the shoes that he wore. And I was like,
yeah,
it's just kind of a cool.
It's just
cool
a connection to make. Like even if you don't even know the person, you see him like, oh man, I like your Jordans, and you actually know what Jordan it is.
Right.
They were like, oh man, no one's ever like, get away from me.
Yes. The look on his face when I put it, he turned around like he couldn't wait to tell me
to talk about
his new Jordans he just got like 2 days ago.
Yeah, he's proud of those Jordans.
Yes, and I just always remember that guy. I should have got his name and stayed in touch with him, but I just always remember that interaction at Shake.
Yeah,
my first Shacky Dino.
My first pair was the 6 infrared 6s.
Really?
They're my favorites too. The 6s are my favorites. Yeah,
it's a good shoe for sure.
Yeah, Michael. I mean, I guess the greatest.
Nah. LeBron's the greatest to me, but
gotta save that for another podcast.
Yeah, that's barbershop talk. Yeah, that's barbershop talk.
I'm gonna go with say Michael's still the greatest with the rings, but LeBron is of course great in himself. All right, Brad. Now I kind of want to get into the mortgage side, the lending side. You are with Bell Bank Mortgage.
Yep.
You were with Wells Fargo for a little while. How did that progression come from the K Jewelers into, the mortgage world? How did you become interested? I know you touched on it a little bit earlier that, Goran kind of piqued your interest in regards to real estate.
Yeah.
But one, how did you start with Wells? And then how did you find yourself at Bell? Because you really feel like you found yourself at the perfect place with Bell.
Yeah, for sure. So when I worked at the jewelry store, at that time I'd read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I'd talked to Goran. I knew I wanted to own a property and try at some point to invest in property. And one of my regular customers at the jewelry store was actually a loan officer with Wells Fargo. I don't think she's with Wells, maybe not even in the industry anymore. And she one day pulled me aside and said, Brad, I can tell that, you're good at sales, you're personable, but I could tell that you just don't have a passion for what you're selling. And she asked me kind of like, if you could sell anything in the world, what would it be? And I was like, well, I kind of like houses. And she was like, what about a realtor? And I was like, I don't know. And then she was like, well, here's what I do, and started telling me about it. And I was like, well, that's kind of cool. At the time we had just bought our first house, or we're just going to buy our first home, just gotten married. And so the thought of getting into something straight commission at that time, mid to early 20s, was a bit scary. And so she just connected me with somebody at Wells to kind of learn the ropes. I was just a personal banker for a year. Then I shadowed under a gentleman named Jeff Shore at Wells, who's like one of the top guys at Wells, if not the top guy in Minnesota. And then I worked there, did 5 years hard time at Wells Fargo. And it was a great company. I learned a ton. You kind of get thrown into the meat grinder there, which was perfect for a guy like me. I learned more hands-on than I do reading from a book. But then, at a certain point, you kind of realize at a company that large that you are a bit more of a number.
Yep.
And I kind of thought, all right, well, I've got myself established. I've got my feet under me. Like now is sort of the time where I could try to make my next move, my best move kind of a thing. And I really just started interviewing realtors I knew, title companies I knew, just like who's the best company? Who do you have the fewest problems with? Who gets the closing package out right away? And it was really between Bell and Delaris at that point. And one other called Cherry Creek Mortgage, did
they go under? Are they still around?
I don't think they're still around anymore. They're more of a smaller kind of a broker shop, which I talked to them and wasn't really interested after an initial meeting.
Yeah.
Then I met with, at the time, my manager, Keenan Raverty at Bell. And it was just like a totally different process than anywhere else I'd been. And honestly, when I interviewed with them, I was like, wow, I have no shot at ever working at this place. It just sounds like they hire really experienced people, have a high bar for entry. And that kind of got me more interested. Like I was more like, I got to follow up with this Keenan guy. Like now I've being that I feel like I can't get there, I want to get there. You know, it's like, it's like if there's a party going on that you weren't invited to, you're like, I want to go there.
Yeah, this is the company you want to align yourself with.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a challenge, similar to the biking challenge.
Correct.
You want it.
Yep, correct. And so that's what I did. I kind of stayed in front of him. And yeah, kind of here I am. The rest is history.
No, that's awesome. And, you know, we love working with Bell, and they've gotten bigger over the years. They've acquired a few other smaller banks and other mortgage lenders.
Yep.
And they have great programs.
Yeah, we have a lot of, I mean, the whole wide range from down payment assistance, low down payment, all the way up to jumbo financing, investor financing, new construction financing, just about anything. I think we have a product to finance it for sure. Yeah,
no, I would say, you know, I think the thing is with the mortgage financing, it's not the sexiest topic for people, right? But it is a very necessary topic for people, right? And a lot of people have these, I guess, like misconceptions in our industry. And I just kind of want to get your take. You know, maybe we can try to dispel some stigma or misconceptions in our industry, right?
I love it.
The 20% one,
sure,
or other things where people just don't know what they don't know. Because I know, so we grew up in Cedar Riverside, and I thought like the home ownership was like for super rich people, and like we would never own a home, and it's just like that, and kind of taking it back to Goran. He helped me purchase my first home and everything he did, and I was just like, how at the age of 21? Can you kind of just talk about this generation, or, you know, the 90s generation, or the, what is it, Gen Z, Gen Y? I don't even know anymore.
Gen Z.
Yeah, can you, if they were listening right now or watching, how do you tell them, like, hey, home ownership is for sure you are for sure able to do it. It is not something where it's some high pie in the sky type thing.
Yeah. You know, I think a lot of people have to have a realization similar to you. I think a lot of young people, it's hard to project sort of beyond a month or two when you're young.
Yeah.
And so there is a lot of pessimism around home ownership for young people, certainly right now.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of it is remembering that all generations have gone through the housing cycle, which is really all that it is, right? I mean, interest rates are historically low, and then home prices go up, and, you know, same thing, people talking about their parents who bought a home for $20,000. Well, the interest rate was probably 20%. So each market has its opportunities and its pitfalls, but there's always an option to get into the home. And I think that's the biggest hurdle for people is almost accepting that, like accepting the fact that, hey, there is a way for you to get into a property.
Yeah.
We may need to build your credit.
Yeah.
We may need to save up a little bit for down payment. We may need to stabilize your income or whatever that is, however that is. But if you want to buy a home, we can do it. Don't let anybody tell you that home ownership is some impossible task, because it's not. But I do understand and empathize with anybody who's younger or who's gone through some financial instability or turbulence. I certainly empathize with them and understand that it does on the surface appear to be sort of a tall task, right?
Yeah.
I get that. So really, I just try to coach people, hold their hands, show them numbers. But I think the big thing is just sort of just empathizing with people. Like, hey, I get it. I was in your shoes at some point. I didn't think I could buy a property. I own a property. I own a rental property. I own a short-term property now. We just got to take a shot and get our foot in the door. And once your foot's in the door,
and showing them
it becomes
options.
easier than that. Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. Showing them options.
I think it's like the credit score thing too with young people, right? A lot of young people, like the whole, like when you're going through school, you don't know about credit score.
Right.
You don't know, hey, how do I save for a down payment? The easiest thing is like, well, here's first month's rent and security deposit.
Yeah.
Right? That's super simple. There's two things and you're in.
Yep.
Whereas in this, you're like, well, do you have some savings? You know, What do you have for your credit score? Do you have like you said, a stable income? I just wish more schools would teach about that, especially credit score. I think, you know how important credit here is in America or in any Western first world country.
Right.
How important to have a good credit. And a lot of people, that's the pitfalls they fall in.
Right.
Would you say that's kind of the most biggest thing when people come to you is helping them with their credit? And if I came to you right now and I said, hey, Brad, but my credit was a little bit lower, what are some coachable actions you can give me right now?
Sure. So one, I would say, yes, credit is probably the hardest part, especially for first-time home buyers.
Yep.
You know, they kind of get hit with the double whammy of being on their own insurance the first time. So the two things we see credit-wise with younger people are probably medical expenses that they've lost track of, haven't paid, whatever. Or people that just come out and they're like, man, college came up. I got my first credit card. I was going to the bar all the time. I was buying books and it just kind of got away from me. Totally get it.
Books and bars.
Yeah, books and bars. In terms of helping people with credit, I'm not a credit consultant or anything. So it's more just what I've read and what I've experienced. One, there's some good programs right now that are helping people. Experian Boost is phenomenal. If you want to Google that. Otherwise, I just tell people the main thing is just to slow down with credit. If you did do that card and you went crazy at bars and buying books, great. You've kind of solved the problem or you've identified the problem. So now let's take a step back. Let's not go to the bar and buy books as much. Let's not apply for any new debt. That's a big one that really hurts people's credit is they'll hear, well, I have to have, 4 to 5 trade lines, and they'll go to the mall and they'll get a Nordstrom's card, Best Buy card, everything, thinking that will help their credit, which
it's not.
Isn't really the case. And that's where I always tell people, hey, the main thing we need to do here is just slow down, not take out any more debt, make sure we can handle the debt that we currently have. And then it just kind of, it does its own thing.
Yeah, it does its own
It
job.
gets pretty easy, really.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm at the bars reading the books, Brad.
Sure.
Okay. Me too.
I'm in there reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah. But, and that's, to your point about there's not a lot of educational opportunities for finance. A lot of it kind of is on that individual, unfortunately.
Yeah.
With books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Correct. And it's financial literacy. And I think the young generation really, really, really needs to learn financial literacy. And that's why I'm kind of happy in regards to some Instagram accounts, TikTok accounts, and the social media accounts that do really touch on that.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, those aren't as big as the entertainment accounts or the humor accounts and stuff like that. But I do hope more and more people start to see that.
Sure.
Just gotta start pointing on TikTok.
30% utilization on your credit card.
Do this, not that.
Yeah. I think the one best tip I ever learned about credit is like, it really doesn't matter how much you spend. You could literally buy a candy bar and pay that off every month.
Correct.
And what I used to do when I was younger to get into my first house, I would just buy my gas every month, just use my credit card for my gas, and I would pay it off at the end of the month. And my credit within 3 months jumped up incredibly.
I tell people all the time, just do 1 tank of gas a month and pay it off. Not even every tank, just one.
Yeah. Brad's my personal lender, by the way.
There you go. Thanks for the plug.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to now jump into the Q&A portion of the podcast. So this is all the questions sent by you wonderful folks. Thank you so much.
Thank you for sending these questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to send those in. So we'll kind of get into it. And so the first question we had was, should a first-time investor use hard money in this market where we are in now?
Oh, man. It's a little bit subjective. I think it sort of depends on where they are, and again, how much financial education they have.
Correct. I was going to say, who is this person?
Right. Hard money is good for what it does, but I don't think it's good for every person or maybe even every property.
Yeah.
It is certainly a little bit more costly, which can become a little bit more risky.
Yep.
That being said, I think there's a lot of people out there who are very good at what they do, no matter what it is, and are sort of self-starters and self-taught who can certainly make it work without a problem.
I say you can. It depends on the person. If you're very organized, very go-getter, and you have things in order, you're good at budgeting.
Yeah.
And, you're staying on top of the property, because I'm guessing when they say a hard money, it's mainly for a flip. Right?
Yeah, it's not long term. It's a short term.
So I don't know too many people that get hard money for buy and holds. They kind of get them more for flips.
Yeah, traditionally for sure. Some people will kind of during the process, depending on where the market is, may say, hey, Brad, we want to refinance into a 30-year fixed rate because this will become a rental. Plans and situations have changed, but traditionally for sure, it's more for flip properties.
Yep. And so that question wholly depends on the person, I think. Some people I would probably say no. So, okay. This one is a funny one someone sent me. Even if rates go down, how will people afford homes when eggs are more expensive than a gallon of gas?
I guess you just got to stop eating eggs, right?
I can't, Brad. I swear to God, I have 3 eggs every morning, and it is hurting me.
How many eggs does this person eat?
No, but I think behind the humor of this question, it does bring up a very good, very good point, because things are going up, where for the most part, salaries and income have stagnated, whereas in other things have started to inflate at a crazy rate.
Right.
Gas being one of them, eggs being another, or other things, rent, crazy.
Yeah. The cost of, even homeowners insurance has gone up because the cost of goods to fix things, that has certainly put a crunch on people when they're looking at housing payments, which wouldn't even have thought of a couple of years ago,
My answer to this is you're going to have to live somewhere regardless. Correct. Right. And either you're going to be paying rent, you're going to be living with your parents, or, some type of roommate type situation.
In the basement or upstairs. Next to them.
Or a home. And in those 3 situations, the best, I wouldn't say the cheapest, because, obviously living with your parents is cheaper, but
sure.
The most headaches is probably that.
Yeah. You have zero privacy.
Right.
And
they're buying
renting.
the eggs though.
Yeah.
Sure, they are buying the eggs.
Right. I think between the renting and homeowner ownership it's much more affordable to own a home. I've rented, I've owned a home, and owning the home beats renting all the time. Yeah. And I'm not even taking the equity thing into consideration.
Right.
So what's your kind of take on that in regards to the renting versus the buying? Because we do obviously have a little bit bias, but I still think unless you have some plans to move immediately,
sure,
I don't see how it could beat it.
I always tell people this: pride of home ownership is undefeated.
Yeah.
Period.
Yes.
When I get a first-time home buyer into a home, doesn't matter if it's down payment assistance, 20% down, whatever. When they come back to me for their next property, it's like talking to a totally different person.
Yeah.
Like, hey, Brad, how are you? Man, this is what happened since I bought my house. I've gotten 2 promotions. I got married. I had 2 kids. Now I just want to get in the school district that I was going to be in. Yeah. And I always kind of bring it back to like, oh, that's so awesome. Congratulations. You remember like when you and I were first going through your first house, and same thing. Like, man, I can't even believe I did it, working at Maplewood Mall or wherever it was. Like, I can't believe I made it work while I was working at X job. I was single or whatever. And it just seems, man or woman, like that pride of home ownership, having that housing stability, knowing where you're going home every night, knowing you don't need to pack up and move every 12 months.
The landlord's not there, like
knocking on the door, paying the rent.
You can have, you can have friends over, you can entertain, like, it's
yours.
It changes people. It legitimately will change your life if you buy a home and you take pride in that.
Yes. Quick story. Obviously, immigrant, first generation immigrant, lived in Cedar Riverside apartments. Like home ownership to me was like the ultimate American dream. The whole house, white picket fence, dog, blah, blah, blah. Like I was like, man, if I can get a home, and you're right, but the natural progression has always tended to be upwards. Once
your
home
life
ownership.
trajectory will drastically change.
Okay. Best way to buy a condo / penthouse in St. Paul.
Use Brad Nolan.
Use Brad
Step
for your
one.
loan.
Yeah.
Use me and Julian as your agents.
Sure. Yeah, that's where you go.
No, I think buying a condo or penthouse, I think the one thing we would say is look at the HOA.
Yeah. Please.
That's the biggest thing. Look at the HOA.
Homeowners Association.
Yes. Can you live with their rules? Can you live with their payments? Can you live with all of that stuff? I would always tell people, if you're going to buy anything with an HOA, look into the HOA.
Yeah. Yep.
Very detailed, their financials, their rules, their regulations, who's running on the board, everything like that. Like I can't stress that enough. My first home was a townhouse and they wouldn't let us do Halloween decorations or this or that. I constantly got into it with them because my grandpa would park right in front of my house and be like, we have designated parking areas. I'm like, he's an old man with a walking cane. In the winter when you guys don't even salt the ice, you want him to walk like 50 feet.
Right.
Yeah. It depends on your lifestyle too.
Correct.
If you like the city living in downtown St. Paul or Minneapolis, the people our office is downtown St. Paul, and I don't see children walking around here.
Correct.
I see like young or even old professional looking people that live in these condos, you know? So I don't see a lot of families down here. Whereas if you're living in the suburbs or just like the Matt Grove, Highland area, you see more families.
Yeah. Sure.
Sure. So that's another thing too. Just think about the situation that you're in. If you get with someone and you guys plan on getting married and having kids within 2 to 3 years, and probably condo ain't for you.
Right. Yep.
Another one we had, minimum credit score for DPA programs, 0 down options, MHFA 1,000 down, and details on physician loans. So there's kind of a bunch of in there. I think I really like the 0 down option. Like, is that even a possibility? And what is that like?
Yes, it's kind of a combination of a couple things. First mortgage, second mortgage, a little bit of seller paid closing costs in there. To your point, we usually need a minimum of $1,000. So the earnest money from the buyer. One good thing I always tell people is if they're a renter and they haven't damaged their property, that $1,000 will be coming back to them in the form of their security deposit refund, which to them is sort of a nice little way to get it pretty darn close to 0 down for sure.
Which is crazy because remember earlier we were like 20% down myth.
Right.
20% down to 0 down.
Right. Right.
So there is programs. So do not be discouraged. If you're listening or watching to this, please reach out. There is a program for you. There's grants. There's down payment assistance. There's so much stuff out there.
And you can go
crazy.
Down payment assistance. I mean, typically you can still go to the low 600s with those programs.
Yep.
So don't think that some minor credit challenges would kind of disqualify you from those programs.
Yes.
So what would you say, like a 620 to qualify for down payment assistance?
620 for certain programs. If you can get above 640, that will really open quite
You're
a
in the
few
sweet
more
spot.
Yep, for sure.
Do you know of any local ones here? Like just in St. Paul or Dakota County?
Typically, I will just pre-qualify using Minnesota Housing just because that doesn't restrict them just to St. Paul or Ramsey County. They can kind of use the entire 11-county metro.
Okay.
But there's all sorts of niche programs in Dakota County, cities, all sorts of stuff for sure.
Perfect.
Yes. This one was a very, hot topic one. How do you solve racial disparities in housing? And it's obviously we're not going to solve it with this podcast and everything like that, but it's a good question to have.
It's a great question.
Yeah.
There is a huge disparity.
Huge.
Yes.
Huge. I mean, I believe Minnesota is the biggest in the nation.
We do.
If I'm mistaken. Yeah. Which is crazy.
Which is absolutely nuts.
Crazy. I'm probably not a smart enough person to solve this problem, but I am a believer that 90% of problems in society can be solved just through education. And I think that's where a lot of these communities, minorities, low income areas just nobody's gone to educate them. You know what I mean? Like nobody's kind of gone to say, hey, have you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad? Or can we get a program in the schools for these things? Yeah. I'm not smart enough. I don't know why that hasn't happened. Yeah. But it's certainly a problem. And when I hear, hey, we have the largest housing disparity in the United States, I would say, well, that probably makes our housing market semi-vulnerable, I would think. Mm-hmm. I mean, all things in life to me require some form of balance or mixture. And so when I hear that, to me, I'm kind of like, that I think leaves our market a little bit vulnerable, I think.
For sure. I mean, surprise, we're diverse.
Yeah, surprise. Yeah. If you guys didn't know already. And I agree with you, Brad, that it is a lack of education, because back when I was younger and I didn't know, I like I said earlier, I thought it was the hardest thing. I thought it was basically impossible. Your name had to be Max Powers. You had to be making $1 million. It was some just far off dream, or a lot of money. Or I thought it was a very generational thing, right? Like these people bought so long ago, they passed it off to their kids and their kids, and it just went on. Yep. And I just never thought about it that way. But you are so right in regards to once you have the home ownership, your trajectory for the most part is upwards, unless, obviously you do some crazy stuff. But it's a huge, huge anchor in life. Yeah. For you to then go off to do other things. Right. So hopefully, there's more programs and more education around this, and hopefully we can kind of start to teach people, and maybe, who knows, maybe this podcast will help at least one person. And I mean, one thing I would say is sort of like, shame on me. Here I am saying, well, we need to educate more. And it's like, I could look in the mirror. I probably haven't gone out and educated enough people. And so certainly shame on me. I think all of us in real estate could probably use some coming together to find a way to solve some of this stuff. Same for me and Julian. I think that's the thing, is we want to educate, and that's the best way to sell, is through education. Sure. What's the minimum credit score and down payment I need to buy a home? It kind of depends on everybody, but I would say the minimum for someone who qualifies would be either $1,000 or 1% down payment, assuming you qualify for one of those programs. Minimum credit score at Bell would be 600. Certain other companies can probably go a little bit lower than that if they have different programs and whatnot. Mm-hmm. But for us at Bell, we would have kind of a limit at 600. Okay. And that's not a high amount or threshold or anything. No. Sure. So a lot of people can hit that right now that are not homeowners. And I would say we love talking to people who are not at 600 yet, because those are the people that we can take the time, we can educate, we can fix their credit, even to get, if you apply at 600, that's great. If we can get your credit up to 650, 700, the terms of that mortgage will only improve, making your, home ownership experience that much better, for sure. So you can buy a house with a 600 credit score and $1,000 down, or
1%,
or 1%,
either one, depending on the program. Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Wow. That's amazing. Okay. This question is now a good time to buy.
Yes, I would say the right time to buy a home is always yesterday, I guess, is probably what most people say. Yep. I mean, you look at the factors around supply and demand, especially when rates go up, they build less homes. And it seems like that's kind of something that we're experiencing right now.
Feeling in the new construction market now, for sure.
And even, I think there's still so many people waiting on the fence or the sidelines for their opportunity to get in. Once that opportunity presents itself, they're going to jump in. Yeah. And so to me, even looking back at this market in 2008, we came down a little bit, but we weren't really pounded like Arizona, Florida, Las Vegas. So our market has been pretty resilient. But again, I just think going back to the trajectory of your life, the sooner you can start that trajectory in an upward motion is going to serve you pretty well. over your life.
I always look at it as decades, right? Even if there's periods where it does go down or things happen, every decade real estate has gone up and appreciated.
Yes.
Every single decade. You take out a decade, it has gone up.
Yeah.
So it's an appreciating asset where you can get into $1,000.
Right.
Potentially you can get...
It's the price of an iPhone.
Right? Yeah. You can get into, who knows, $250,000, $500,000 for an asset as low as, 3 to 5, whatever the percentage might be. So I don't know of any other asset like that and then it can grow over 10 years. I think the first home we bought was $150 in 2011. It was a detached townhome. And in 2021, I think it was valued a little bit over like $375.
Yeah.
You name something that can appreciate like that.
I mean, we just helped a client of mine who used down payment assistance like 5 years ago. Literally, seller paid, down payment, whole thing, got in for $1,000 of their own money. They just rolled $150,000 of equity into their next property, moving up.
And if
that is a life changer.
Yeah,
life changer.
Big time. Big time.
And if you live in the property, it's your primary residence, you don't get hit with capital gains tax either.
Correct.
So you get to keep that money.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, Brad, is it worth competing in a multiple offer situation? And, we can answer this after you because I'm sure you don't. I know you write the pre-approval and everything, but we deal with the multiple offers.
I think to a point, I think if there's something in life that you want, you should try to go get it.
Yep.
But I don't think you should go get it if it is going to sacrifice something else that you have in your life.
Yep.
I'll wholeheartedly agree. I always tell all of my clients, please write an offer you are comfortable with, right? Never get out of your own skin or your own comfortability. Never make yourself uncomfortable to just get this place. Write something where you're comfortable with, and if you get it, great. If you don't, don't get too emotionally attached with it. Julian, do you want to kind of add something to that real quick?
I agree with that. Like, it's tough in that situation because buying a home, your first home, is very emotional.
Yeah.
And you gotta play the therapist role too, as long as like being the professional in the situation.
Yep.
So I tell them that, hey, let's put our best foot forward, and if we get it, that's great. But if you don't, then that, hey, they just beat me to it without me giving up my right hand to buy the house.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. No shame in losing that one.
There's no shame. And then when I break it down to them like that, they're like, hey, you know what? You're right. Because it's just anything else, we just couldn't afford it. We just can't do it. And I don't want to be in that situation.
Yeah. And there's always going to be another house.
Yeah.
Like,
always.
You always, the home you get is always the home you were meant to get. Is
correct.
How I see it.
I agree wholeheartedly. Okay. Least favorite part about buying or owning a home, and favorite part of buying or owning a home.
Everybody always hates the documentation, which I totally understand.
Yeah.
There's a lot of red tape in lending. We ask
what
for
are
a lot of
these
stuff.
papers you're showing me?
After 08, there is a lot.
Yes.
So you're telling me my dog Airbud can't get that $1 million mansion?
We are not extending.
He's a
credit
professional
to Airbud.
basketball player, Brad.
So that's what I would say. The documentation, to me, I think it's understandable. We do need to make sure there's not fraud, unsavory things like that. We do need to verify that you are and you're doing what you say you're doing.
Yep. Duffel bag full of cash.
Duffel bag.
Proof of funds.
Duffel bag, boy.
Pull out a whole bunch of money. There we go.
But again, what I love about home ownership is just the pride of home ownership, stability. It just, when you have that anchor in your community, it just it's one less thing to worry about. And it's probably the biggest thing that people do worry about.
Yeah.
And so I love owning a home. I do. I love having neighbors, and I love my kids having other friends in the neighborhood. I love owning a home.
Yeah, I can't tell you the amount of clients I've, when they bought their home, like they just love fixing things around the house or mowing the lawn or like just that type of stuff. They take pride in it.
Yeah,
like you
take
said.
great pride. Yep.
It's a very like Hank Hill type of thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Let me just mow my lawn and drink my beer in the alleyway.
Yep.
Okay. What are the tax benefits of owning a home?
If you have a mortgage on it, obviously you can write off the interest.
Yep.
Depreciation is another thing. If it's a rental property, other expenses. no
and
capital
we've kind of
gains.
touched on the appreciation part too.
Yeah,
it's such a crazy thing because at one point you can write off depreciation, and then the other side, your asset is appreciating.
Right, and that's just in the U.S. tax code, because when you look at the other spending that buying a home initiates, it's crazy. I mean, it's like when you buy a home, the next 6 months of your life, you're spending at Home Depot, at places you've never shopped before.
Yep. Furniture.
So it's just a big driver of commerce, owning a home, and buying a home.
Yes. Oh, it's funny, Brad, that you bring that up. I remember when I was buying that home and Belle sends you that packet of like things you'll need.
Yep.
Where it's like home tools, a lawnmower, either a shovel or a snowplower. And I just like would go through this list. I'm like, God, this is a lot of shit.
Yeah, but I talked to all homeowners about that. When you talked about, do you want multiple offers or whatever, I always tell people, like, don't forget, there's things you haven't thought of that you will need to. You've thought of the couch and the TV and the stuff in the kitchen, all that stuff, but you haven't thought about anything in the garage.
The snowblower,
rake, shovel, all that stuff. So
it adds up quick.
Outside patio, this, that. Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
But again, it's all worth it.
Right.
Honestly,
Correct.
it's all worth it.
Correct.
Okay. The last question we have, and I think we touched a little bit about this earlier. What are the benefits of buying versus the benefits of renting? I think the one thing I would say the benefits of renting is if you're moving soon or you don't have stability, job switching, military type thing or this or that.
Easy to get out.
Yeah, renting. But to me, I'm like, even in that situation, you can buy if it's a great place and then rent out your home and someone else is paying your equity.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people with that renting, they're like, oh, I don't want to deal with tenants and, that whole, you can get a property management company.
Right.
And a lot of them are under $100 a month. So would you want to have someone else, a company, just deal with your rental and then you just collect a check every month? Or you want to so again, options.
Right.
People don't know what they don't know.
Yeah. Talk to Brad here who stated that he has a rental and a short-term rental. What would you say?
So right now we have one long-term and the short-term, and we self-manage both.
Yeah.
I think if I had one more of either type of property, I probably would hand it off to a company, just because, again, 2 little kids at home, I only have so much time.
Yeah, a lot going on.
But I do, especially with my kids, I do enjoy showing my kids me managing these property, doing turnovers, trying to find a tenant, going over to fix little things. Like I love bringing my daughter along on stuff like that, just to show her at an early age, both me working on this stuff, but also just like, this is how certain people live. And that's just a different way to live. And that's cool. And that's okay.
Yeah.
So it just kind of gives her, hopefully, a more well-rounded, knowledge of real estate, home ownership, and a work ethic.
Well, that's a good thing to know that you're not a slumlord.
Right. Yeah.
You're actually working on these properties.
Every time someone says the word knowledge, it makes me remind me of that Ty Lopez. Here in my garage with the Lamborghini. Knowledge. No.
That's another fraud. You mentioned the Liver King. Now you're on a roll with the frauds today. The famous frauds, I call them.
Oh my God. No, I wholeheartedly agree. In regards to the property management, I think you have to acquire a certain amount before it financially makes sense to do property management. But I also tell people, yes, when you have just a few, you should run it so you know and learn, right? So when you do hand it off to a property management company, you know what they're talking about. You can kind of interject and say, hey, this or that, hey, this is what I'm looking for in a tenant.
Right.
This is, where I need for them to pay rent and, other things like that in regards to accounting as well, too.
Yeah. I think it just goes down to situation. Again,
yes.
Because I've had a client that they kept her house, but now, since COVID, that you can work from home. So she took a job in Texas.
Okay.
Who's going to watch her house?
Right.
And she doesn't want to sell it, you know?
Yeah.
Because if things go south with her rental or her job, then she can just move back up here. So I was like, just get a property management company. She was like, I don't mind doing that.
Right.
Yeah. So again, just situations, options. That's why we do what we do.
Right.
We present value.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
If you tend to get a better property too, a more turnkey per se property, you will have less tenant issues.
Yes.
You will have less, property issues and stuff like that. And you can kind of, for the most part, coast. I mean, a client of mine bought a new construction townhouse in Brooklyn Park, and I helped him put a renter in there, and it was a pilot, and I promise you, one, he's never there, and two, it's just like autopilot. No pun intended, but it's just like it just gets paid and he loves it.
Doesn't even think about it. Yeah,
exactly. All right, guys, that brings us to the end of the podcast. We've had a wonderful time with our good friend here, Brad Nolan, and we're thankful for everyone that sent in a question. We hope we gave you an answer that suffices. If you want more information or details, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to help you in any way. We appreciate everyone that listened and watched. Please subscribe to our channel, like the video, drop some of your own question in the comments section. We'll be sure to reply. But thank you, everyone. Brad, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much. We appreciate all the help you've done in regards to helping our deals go through.
Sure, yeah, you're welcome.
Calling you at random times, Brad, what's going on here? I've for sure called you many of times. I was like, Brad, I need this done.
That's the job. That's the teamwork. Right?
That's the job. That's the teamwork. And, I'm going to say it live on air. I think the next one, we're going to bring you a special kind of, not a weekly deposit, but maybe a video of all of us on a bike tour.
Okay. I like that. I like that.
I want to go on a bike tour. I love biking, but more summer biking, but I'd be down for a winter biking too.
Either one. Tour to St. Paul. I like it.
Tour to St. Paul.
Tour to St. Paul. Okay, thank you, everyone, and we'll see you on episode 10.
All right, thanks.
All right, everyone.
See you.